Hello, 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 everyone. This is Diamond J, and I'm your host with Beyond the Glitter. And I am here with Kaleema Overton Ameen. So I'm super excited about our guest today. I want you to actually listen to what we all have to say. She's going to give us some good nuggets and some good feedback on her book, Hidden in Plain Sight. So I'm super excited about that. If you are in the audience, definitely ask your questions. We have questions at the end. If you have questions in the middle, you can definitely type them up, and we'll get to your questions as well. So, welcome, Kaleema.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having come onto the show. We appreciate you taking out the time to do so. So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am originally from North Carolina, and I'm currently working as a policy analyst. I've been a policy analyst in the federal government for almost 30 years. I've been working in that
Wow.
field. And so I went to college to major in English Lit, and I never really used it until now, of course. I didn't use it for what I thought I was going to do. I was always writing poetry and short stories, even from the time I was 12. But then I went into the federal government as my career. And so I became a policy analyst writing, federal healthcare policy.
Uh-huh.
So when I experienced, this very traumatic event, this was kind of, a part of my therapeutic process, to write. And so I did not have the intention of writing the book. It just kind of grew from that. And
Okay.
I don't know how much more you want me to go into about that, but like I said, I'm originally from North Carolina, and um, I'm a twin. We have 7 sets of my family,
Wow.
and my
Okay.
siblings and cousins, extended family. And so I grew up, in a small town in North Carolina where we could just kind of run and play and have a good time. And our whole family lived within 6 blocks, so we had
Right.
freedom of movement. And so I had we were all struggling, but I would say I had a pretty good childhood.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. So I wanted to get into, I wanted to get into a little bit about your book is called Hidden in Plain Sight. And man, you got a catchy title. You have the man with the roses. I mean, it is absolutely intriguing. Like, what is going on here? So definitely want to get into that piece. What inspired you to write this book? How did you become, get this story out? What inspired you to do so?
I don't even know if I would call it inspiration. I think I would call it a need, you know,
Okay.
w- just kind of to fast forward while I was married, I was caring for my father. He was terminally ill and he was living in the home. And it was during COVID, and I was working in the federal government. So I'm working around the clock, taking care of my father and, my family. And so we were going on this vacation that was supposed to be a break, for me. And so we went on the family vacation, and my then husband abandoned us there. And to kind of fast forward, it turned out it was all planned. It wasn't happenstance or accidental. And then I later find out that he did something similar, in the past, to another wife. And so after all of that occurred, when I get back home, and of course I'm still caring for my dad, I start to, because writing is something that soothes me, I start
Mhm.
to research and read and write about, why does this happen? How does this happen? And I'm kind of skipping forward. But once I started doing that, I got an invitation to write a 7 week column in the Muslim Journal about abandonment in the Muslim community. When that
Okay.
um, got public, I was getting emails and text messages and messenger inbox and from women saying, "Well, why did you only write about Muslims? It just doesn't happen to Muslims. It happens, to everyone." And I never
Mhm.
really looked at it as far as it doesn't happen to others, but I was just writing because of in that fashion because of what was happening in my community. I actually went forward in my Muslim community and I lodged a public complaint against my then husband, and that had never been done before.
Oh, wow.
I asked the judge to have the imam to be an expert witness about not about the marriage, but about my rights as a Muslim woman. So in my mind, I'm thinking about how my rights as a Muslim woman have been violated, and I want those rights to be restored, and I want there to be some retribution for this. So that's how I ended up writing, to that community. But after that, once I was able to really, converse with other women, I said, there's a bigger story here. And I wanted to really focus on the most vulnerable in the population. And, granted, I was not the most vulnerable, because it didn't cause me to. Often, when times when women are abandoned, they lose their homes, their cars, their jobs, their
Right.
they become homeless in the cars with their children. And so I wasn't considered the most vulnerable. So I wanted to focus on other stories, other than my own. So that's
Right.
why I ended up pulling in other women to talk about their stories and to develop the case studies.
Wow. So this is unlike, it's very interesting because it's unlike any other book that I've been familiarized with, right? So a lot of people do a lot of anthologies where you're pulling together people's stories, but you actually did case studies on this. Can you give me a little bit more information about that? Because you actually studied and did, surveys and went out and talked to a lot of people. Can you give us insight on that?
Yes, I decided to just go from a vantage point, of something that I was familiar with. And because I'm a policy analyst, I analyze policies and procedures, all the time. And so I decided to analyze a policy and procedure of grooming and abandonment and
Okay.
abuse and abandonment. And how do people get groomed into, this situation? And so that's why I ended up interviewing women and developing these case studies. And what I did was have them respond um, to a written survey, and then I followed up with either a Zoom interview or a telephone interview to talk about the stages. And so I divided the case study into stages: the love bombing, spirit breaking, and then abandonment, just to see how this process happened for all of these women who were very different. The women were African American, South American, Caucasian, Muslim, Christian, Catholic. But I'm thinking, how did all these women from these different backgrounds end up in this same position? And they're not, oftentimes you hear people say, oh, these women must have low self-esteem, or these women must, you know, be marginalized in some way. But I was interested in
Mhm.
about how the women who are very, successful in their careers, highly educated, prominent in the community, or organizers, or, leaders in their community, on their jobs and in their families, like, how are these women getting groomed into this situation? Because people often assume she might lack education, or she doesn't have financial resources. And so I wanted to look at it from a different vantage point. And doing the case study, I started to see patterns. And that comes from my policy analyst background, the pattern of behavior, that occurs
Mhm.
with all of these men. You would think that all the women in the book were married to the same man. And so that
Right.
to that narcissistic piece of the research.
Okay, that's very interesting, to hear you talk about it, because a lot of people, they usually just write their story, and get the other woman to write their story within the group, but you actually done the studies on it. Talk to me a little bit about, I saw your post today and you said, you actually wrote the book. There was no AI, there was no there was no, help with Chat GPT or anything like that that actually helped you write this book. So talk to me a little bit about that, and how was that process, of you writing it coming along?
Well, I never considered, it never dawned on me to use AI or Chat GTP, or, I just learned how to say that. So just now, the past couple of months, but it never dawned on me to do that because, like I said, I majored in English lit in undergrad. In graduate school, I majored in urban planning and public policy. And I've been writing, literally for 30 years, doing technical writing. And
Mhm.
policy analysts, our job is to take those broad policies that you see coming out of Congress and out of the White House, and really review those policies to determine where are the holes and where are the gaps, and how can we
Mhm.
fortify this policy? How can we infuse, more programs to assist? And so that's what
Right.
I about with my book. Like, where are the holes and the gaps that cause these women to fall through these cracks?
Right.
Very, educated, successful, prominent women, or not even, maybe if they're not prominent, but um, they're the foundation in their family, in their community.
Right.
Where are these gaps? How are they falling through these gaps? And so that's what
Mhm.
I ended up doing, and just analyzing the policy and the procedure and the process for grooming. Because when you think about it, oftentimes people think the narcissist is targeting people with low self-esteem, but that's quote unquote low lying fruit. The bigger the kill, the bigger the brag. And so if
Yeah.
the narcissist mind, if I can snag this person who is successful in their family or in their career, in their community, in their religious community, if they have money, or even if they just have good looks and they're good arm candy, if I can snag this person, it's going to increase my self-worth. So the narcissist
Mhm.
leech that's always sucking from others to increase their own self-worth. And so that's what I wanted to find out. Like, how does the person groom someone like that? What is it that they do to get you to fall through these cracks?
You mentioned the word grooming, and that's very um, usually when you think about grooming. And help me here, because when I hear the term grooming, you think about little girls being groomed to do certain things. You don't really necessarily hear men, I don't guess, but you really hear that word, and I haven't heard the word grooming in a long time. So it's not a word that we actually use all the time in our everyday jargon that we're talking. So can you tell us a little bit about what grooming is,
Mhm.
and how this grooming is related to your book and the points that you give in your book?
Okay. Well, grooming, I guess, you can use it synonymously with love bombing. And a lot of people now are talking about love bombing. And that's what I'm talking about when you're approached and groomed by this type of person. They're not only going to groom you, the target, they're going to groom everyone around you to compromise your safe spaces. So you, your family, your friends, your coworkers, the neighbor, your kids, the dog, the cat, everyone can be groomed, and love bombed, right? So when you report the abuse, whether it's mental, physical, spiritual, or financial abuse, no one's going to believe you. That is their goal in grooming
Right.
everyone around you. And so this is what I'm talking about with the grooming and the love bombing. And oftentimes people think that love bombing is something that a man is doing just to a woman, but the well-versed narcissist is going to groom and love bomb, even the father and the brothers and the uncles, and everyone is going to be compromised. And so that's what I'm talking about. So when you, like I said, report the behavior, you may get a lot of pushback. And so oftentimes women feel alone when they're abandoned. And this happens because their whole foundation has been chipped away, by the narcissist.
Mhm.
Sooner or
Give
later.
me, give me an example, if you can. Give the audience an example of what that looks like
Okay.
to, the everyday
Yeah.
woman, or
Yes. So I like to compare it to, well, just to do a comparison of bad behavior and narcissistic tendencies, because it's
Okay.
all bad behavior is not narcissistic. Some people have
Right.
bad behavior because they have issues with dealing with their emotions and anger. Maybe they have bad upbringing. Maybe they have no home training. Maybe it's situational and they're exhibiting
Mhm.
bad behavior in the situation, and they think later on, like, wow, I would not, I wouldn't do that again. I should not have done that. They'll have regret. They'll have remorse. They'll maybe apologize, or at the very least not continue that behavior. That's
Mhm.
bad behavior. It could be situational, right? But with the
Okay.
narcissist, they're never going to have regret. They're never going to have remorse. They're never going to feel like they did anything wrong. And no matter what they did to you, it's your fault. I did this to you. And so, for an example, let's say you're having a birthday party, and the person with bad behavior who's angry with you may come to the birthday party late, be disruptive, act a whole fool in front of
Right.
everyone. All the shenanigans and tomfoolery will play out for everyone to see, right?
Right.
This is a person that's typical with bad behavior, no management of their emotions, trying to
Mhm.
embarrass you. But the narcissist won't do that. The narcissist will show up at the party on time, have the biggest gift, lots of praise of you in front of everyone. This is, a
Mm-hmm.
distraction. They will praise you and they will groom and praise and everyone in the room. They will work the room. Meanwhile, during the party, they may come to you and say negative things in your ear, make negative comments about your appearance, say things, who are you to deserve this party? And once
Right.
everyone has gone, after there's no one there, then a full court press will ensue. The demeaning and spirit breaking, maybe even physical abuse. And then, like, because who are you? Who are you to be recognized? Who are you to get accolades? Who are you to be celebrated? You're trying to embarrass me by having them celebrate you. So now it's
Mm-hmm.
embarrassment to them. And then they may
Right.
leave, just kind of disappear and leave for hours, for days, for weeks, for months to punish you for having the audacity to celebrate yourself. You know,
Right.
I remember during this time when the mask, because it's a mask, and when the mask slipped off, I remember talking about a job that I had been offered, and I turned
Mm-hmm.
and it was a job at a prominent university, and I turned it down. And he says, "Who are you to turn that down?" Because I'm turning down the job that he can't get.
Mm.
All of
Mm.
his degrees and accolades and things like that. And I said, well, they're not offering enough money. And that's not what I'm making, what I should be making. They were really lowballing me, but I know my
Mhm.
worth. And so it
Right.
was, it was, who are you? How much money do you need anyway? And that's when the mask has slipped off,
Right.
because we never had any arguments about our incomes or any arguments at all, throughout the marriage. And so it was at that time that the mask slipped off, but then it came back on again. The happy mask came back on again. 2 days later, we go on our vacation, and then he's gone and never to be seen again. And so when the narcissist realizes that you're seeing behind the mask, they will likely disappear.
Wow.
They would disappear because now they're going to go on to groom someone else. They're always in a grooming process. So make no mistake, at this point, someone else is being groomed. I'm just not
Right.
aware, right? And
Right.
so never leave a situation. It's kind of like monkey branching. They never leave one situation until they have their grips on another situation. And I unknowingly was on the monkey branch from the last situation.
Right.
And so we really
Right.
have to do our research and do background checks on people, because even those people who show up good on paper, if you run a background check, you will find some inconsistencies that you need to ask about before you get into this courtship, before you get into this engagement, before you get into this marriage. But as women, as some men, we're always trained to be polite. Don't be too intrusive. Don't ask too many questions. Don't be so aggressive. But no, we
Yeah.
have to give them the same vetting that someone would give you coming on the job. They don't let you just walk up on that job and start working. They're checking you
Right.
from the to the why are we not doing this for the most important decision of our life?
Yeah. You mentioned the vetting process and the questions, and I often say that we as women, we do not vet very well. Men too, they don't vet. I say that we don't know how to date. So we don't really know how to date, but women, we're not asking the right questions. So when you say do a background check, please, I know what it takes. I mean, it doesn't cost that much to do a background check, but when you say
It's very cheap.
you're right, you say that you're seeing stuff on the background check, because this has happened to me. I did a background check and there was nothing there. I did it in the two states that they lived in, and there was nothing there. So, what are you really seeing or looking at that may be inconsistent that you're saying that we probably should question a little bit more?
Well, some of the things, and it's of course it's case by case, but some of
Right,
the things that you want to, and when I think about how inexpensive it is to do a background check, it's amazing that people are not doing that. But I
right,
have to add that from my process, because I was working from within a religious community, and we have a whole other protocol that's happening, right? For
right,
the vetting process. But we're relying too much on the protocol of the religious communities, because not that the protocol is flawed. The flaw is that these types of people prey on religious communities, because they know if I show up as a Muslim, a Christian, a Catholic, or whatever, this is going to be my foot in the door. This is going to be my path.
Mm,
So I'm going to skip over some of those protocols, right?
mhm.
Some of the things you might notice is that the person's name may be misspelled. The middle and first name may be inverted when you pull this background check, and you may see some inconsistencies like this. And you may think, oh,
Mm,
that's an error, but no, it's not an error. I found out that no, people do this on purpose so they can, get under the radar of the background check. Or you may find, residences or apartments or leases in other places that are suspect. You
yeah.
may find the person is holding a lease or has an apartment or has a home someplace else. You will see things like this. You may see another car. You may see another loan. You may see all these things that don't add up. And we need to ask these questions and make sure that we're doing, and if someone says, if you say, do you have a problem with me doing a background check on you? If they blink, keep it moving. Don't
Mm,
even if they stutter, keep it moving.
mhm,
Are you okay with
mhm.
to your ex-husband, your ex-wife? If they don't say okay, keep it moving. And we're not talking to the ex to get the dirt and the who shot John and to create drama. What we really
Mhm.
want to know is because oftentimes marriages don't work out. It doesn't mean that anyone did anything bad. It doesn't mean
Right.
that anyone did anything nefarious. It may mean that it just didn't work out. Maybe they were too young, they grew apart, all kinds of things can happen. But what you really want to know is how did this person leave the marriage? When this
Mm,
started to dissolve, how were you treated during that
right.
marriage? Did they treat you with respect and honor and dignity? Did they honor their financial commitment to the marriage? Or did they just
Mhm.
and leave you holding the bag or rip everything away from you and leave you homeless? You want to know, did they talk with the family? Was there any type of cohesiveness? How were the children treated? You want to know how they left the
Right.
relationship.
Right. That's a really good point that you just dropped, a good gem, because that is very important on finding out kind of
Mhm.
like the kind of like the Risa Tisa story. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's kind of this big story that's a 50-part series that's on TikTok, and she's telling her whole story about it. So Jay says, I had a guy get pissed when I told him I ran a background check on him. He said it infringed on his rights. Right. And that's what
That's a
Camila
red
is.
flag. Yeah.
Yeah, Kaleema is saying it's a red flag. So I'm sure my sister Jay went on and passed that guy up. But yeah, they do that. I had the same thing happen to me. Ran the background check, and they were like, "Well, why you got to do all of that?" And sometimes, well, when I meet somebody, it definitely I'm not letting them know that I'm running that background check because I want to find out what I don't want. I want to see what I see on there, and then I want to ask questions. Oh, okay. Well, you said you never been to jail or you never been to prison, but I want to hear the story. Are you serious? You telling the truth or whatever, whatever. And then that lets me know that, there's some inconsistencies there.
Right. And I think I would, definitely let the person know up front, you know, because we just need to establish what we're doing here. Now, if you're
Mm-hmm.
just hanging out to date, that's one thing. You may wait a little longer. And if but when we're talking about, mostly in my book, I'm talking about, how people maneuver within the religious communities and how they use this as a shield.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they're not using that, they may use their degrees, their career, they use their family, they use their children. We're talking
Mm-hmm.
about these shields that they're using to distract you so you don't
Mm-hmm.
ask these questions and you don't, ask the follow-up questions. Because in my case,
Right.
I asked all the right questions because I already knew the protocol within my
Mm-hmm.
community, right? But what I
Right.
didn't do was ask for proof of the answers because that kind of feels rude, right? Well, you
Right.
said that you make XYZ. Well, I need to see your tax return, right?
Right.
So one of the ladies, because these people have fake jobs, fake friends. When you think of it, they have fake friends. One lady, after she was married to the man, found out he had 47 arrests.
Wow.
Now, yeah. And so these are the things, that we need to state up front. One, what are we doing here? Are we just, you know, but are we going towards a marriage? Like, because in some religious communities, you're only dating for the purpose of getting married. This is
Mm-hmm.
a place for this type of person because it's going to be a quick process. There won't be a 2, 3, 4 years of dating and then 2 years of engagement. And then you're 6 years down the line. There won't be any of that. You're going to have within the year, everything is going to happen. And that's not a problem. The problem is the narcissist will hide behind that. And they jump
Wow.
community to community. They even change religions. I'm telling you what I know, not what I heard. They even change.
Right.
They church hop, they mosque hop, and they religion hop. So if they get caught in one religion, in one church, in one mosque, they go to another one and they reinvent themselves over and over again. So you
Wow.
have to find out if you were over here at this church, or let's say in this community, or wherever it was, where were you in this absent time? You cannot apply for a job and have disconnected dates. So why do you allow
Mm-hmm.
a person to come into your life or apply for the job of being your spouse, your life partner with disconnected dates? You need to fill in these gaps and you need to check. That's what I didn't do. You need to check these gaps. Don't take the word
Mm-hmm.
because people assume, oh, if you weren't over at this church, you were over there, but no one goes over
Right.
to church and say, hey, do you know this person? So this lady, I'm not saying names, but these are real cases because my book is not fiction. She shows
Right.
up at the church of her new spouse to find out. They're like, oh, we're glad to see you back. Glad to see you got off drugs.
So I
Glad
made
to
up a
see
whole story.
you're in recovery. But none of this
Right.
information, was given to her. And so
Mm-hmm.
because we're constantly trying to this is not the time to be polite. If someone broke into your house, you wouldn't say, oh yeah, what are you doing here? Oh no, you're not going to be polite. Someone's potentially trying to break into your safe space and
Mm-hmm.
you need to be polite about it.
Jay says, "Don't, girl, don't get me started on the church predators." Absolutely. So, give us. I know you have 9 points, and I don't know if you want to give all 9. You can if you want to, or you can give us 3 to 4, whatever. But give us the points that we should be looking for in what you have in your book. Give us those points.
Sure. Yes. One of the big things that I have the 9 red flags that you're being groomed for narcissistic abuse, manipulation, and abandonment. So those 9 red flags. But I did talk about some of them already. This grooming process, they're going to be very amenable to everything. They're going to mirror you. Whatever you want, they want. Whatever you hate, they hate. Whatever aspirations and goals you set for yourself, they're going to say, yeah, I want to do that too. I want to open a bookstore. Me too. I want to go on Hajj. Me too. I want to open a yoga studio. I've always dreamed of that. So, and they're creating this bond that's premature, that's not really there, right?
Right.
Everything
Mm-hmm.
you say you want to do, I want to pay off my debt. I want to buy a house. I want to travel. They're going to say, I want to do that too, to create this intimacy that's not really there.
Yeah.
What you need to do is when you get around their family and their friends, you need to ask for proof. And when you get around these people, you need to say, what do you think about, him saying that he wants to open a bookstore? And if they start looking crazy, like, what are you talking about? That's a problem. What do you think about him saying he wants to work from home? Or she wants to, open this yoga studio. You want to follow up, and that's the one of the first things that will happen is the growing process, the mirroring you, your family, your friends, just being a little bit too perfect, a little bit too much, right? The
Mm-hmm.
other things you want to be mindful of, like I said, is if the person has been married before, especially recently, even if it wasn't so recent, you do want to find out about the situation and not create drama, but you just want to know how did this person handle the exit of this marriage. You want to find out about the history and things like that. But some of the 9 red flags are they fall out in this process.
Right.
Some of the things like friends, you may not meet their friends. And it's amazing, especially during COVID, because now everyone's kind of cut off. It's amazing how many times people marry someone or end up in a long-term relationship with someone and they never really meet their friends. And they'll say, I don't have that many friends. I just kind of stay to myself, right? And you never
Mhm.
meet them. One of the ladies in my book realized after the fact, oh, at the wedding, there were none of his friends there. None of his friends,
Wow.
frat brothers, but the wedding was full of her friends and her family and just his immediate family. And so
Yeah.
things can be glossed over if the person just keeps saying, oh, I'm just kind of alone, I say to myself, or whatever the case may be. Yeah.
Right.
Some of the things with the interviews in my book, with this grooming process, it will be something quick because they can only last, 4 to 6 months with this mask, and they have to move and have instant, quick satisfaction and gratification. So if you extend your grooming, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, extend your vetting process, they will
Mhm.
likely be on their own.
They will leave on their own. Is that what you said?
Within 3 months or within
Mhm.
3 to 6 months, they're going to move on because they need to have that instant gratification.
Okay. Derek says, anytime you have multiple stories of these negative reactions, just means that you aren't truly evaluating your trend of interest in a guy. Okay. It's coming from a guy, so that's interesting.
Um,
Yeah. Go ahead.
um, I'm not quite sure about what that, yeah, what he means by that.
Derek, if you can type in the comments and let us know what you mean by your comment, please. And if you guys have any questions for Kaleema, let us know what your questions are in the comments and we'll get them answered. I know that a lot of people have been through situations, are probably some of you are probably in the relationship right now, and you're trying to figure out, are you seeing the same thing? Are you, is this the right thing that I'm seeing? Is this right? Or should I be questioning this? Should I not be questioning this? Definitely ask your questions to Kaleema. She's definitely here and a wealth of knowledge. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was, um, let's talk about when you did this case study. You did the case study and how it took you some time to go through and even read the interview and how that process started, because you actually wanted to make sure that men were being interviewed for this book, make sure that they weren't being male bashed, that type of thing. So give us a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, I didn't interview any men for the book. The interviews are all from women from different backgrounds. It would probably be the size of, an encyclopedia if you're old enough to remember those, or a Bible, if I had done men and women. So I interviewed women for the book. But what I did do is, when you write a book, you get beta readers, and these are like your test pilot readers before it goes to the publisher. And so when I got my 25 beta readers, 17 of them were men. I got more men on purpose because I wanted men to read the book to let me know if they felt villainized by the book, because I definitely was not intending to write a male bashing book. My book is for men and for women. It's for men who have women in their lives, their daughters, their mothers, their sisters, their aunts, that they want to protect from this type of predatory behavior. And so I
Right.
had the 17 beta readers. And they were from different backgrounds. I had Christian ministers, I had Muslim imams, I had teachers, I had psychiatrists, psychologists, I had doctors, I had lawyers, I had rappers, I had social media influencers. I had men from all different backgrounds to read the book. And I was definitely at the point where I could make any changes because I hadn't gone to the publisher. But I was
Right.
very pleased to see that none of the men felt villainized by the book. I did a lot of work to make sure that I did not do that. I just wanted to talk about the grooming process. If a man is reading the book, he can get those same 9 red flags and those 8 steps to recovery that he may encounter with a woman. But I just so happened to interview women because I had just experienced this process. I was researching what I had gone through, researching
Mhm.
what other women had gone through, and I was talking with someone last night that this book, of course, is nonfiction. It's not a story, right? I did actual research. I researched psychiatrists, psychologists, marriage counselors. Marriage counselors also read my book. I had 2 marriage counselors to read my book before it went to the publisher. I wanted them to, and a who has a PhD, in domestic violence, and I wanted them to tell me, make sure I'm on the right track, make sure I'm not interjecting my personal feelings into,
Right.
this. And I do indicate where I'm talking about my own experience and my personal feelings and when I'm talking about what I researched. And so I do make
Mhm.
that distinction in the book.
Mhm. All right. So Derek says, pertaining to the fact that some people don't like background checks. A better mindset in a guy who don't mind the background, who don't mind the checks, are the guys that are usually low key and are quiet.
Mhm. So I'm assuming, I hope I'm understanding, he's saying that not all men who push against the background check are nefarious or up to no good. They just may be low key. But if you go on a job, they're going to do a background check. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
jobs that don't do background checks. And so we're not saying that this is a job, but we're saying if you're man or woman, I'm not saying just the men, the women should be open to it. If you are going on the job of being someone's life partner. Now, I'm not talking about people who are out dating and socializing. There's a difference between dating and courting. Because
Right,
dating is socializing, is entertainment, and everyone has the right to do that. Courting is when you're going into the relationship with the intended purpose of establishing a family, a marriage, a long-term relationship. Okay.
right,
So we definitely want to make that distinction. And we want to say, okay, depending upon the seriousness of it, this background check is going to come into play. But even if you don't run that hard background check online, you need to do the soft background check with the family, the friends, make sure all these things are kosher, because I'm gonna tell you, it's very scary how many people are turning up missing. They go away on vacations and they don't come back. That is what, my counselor said to me. I made a comment, like I said, I guess I should be glad I didn't wake up with a pillow on my face. She said, I wouldn't make light of it. She said, everything that happened to you is what happens when people don't come back. But that's the only thing where it stopped. You came back.
right,
You and your
right.
family back. And so when you think about, I do want to add this point about narcissism is on a spectrum. And so at the high end of the spectrum, you have the serial killer. All
Mhm,
serial killers are narcissistic at their core. And that's why they feel like
mhm.
they can do anything to you. They can take you, they can dismantle you, they can stuff you in a place because they are the ultimate, and they're important and you're not. At the very low
Mhm.
that spectrum is an overindulged, self-indulged person that's very selfish and self-centered. But we want to, I do this, I do explain these in the book and go into detail about it. But I just want to say, when it comes to the background check, I know it can be a sensitive situation. I'm not saying you run a background check because you're going to go have tea with someone, that you're
Right,
going to go out to the movies and dinner and now you need to do a background check. I'm saying you need to do a background check if you're going to make this person an integral part of your life, because this is a
absolutely.
changing decision that you're making. It's not tea,
Right,
you know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Jay says, I think he's saying when we are vetting dating men and have the same negative outcomes, we're the problem. We need to evaluate who we are allowing into our lives. Right. And he says exactly like a job.
Mhm,
Absolutely.
mhm. And
Absolutely. Go ahead.
I was going to say that you're right, because oftentimes we run into these same situations over and over and over again, and we wonder, like, why am I constantly running into this situation? And sometimes people
Mhm.
say, "You are what you attract." I don't believe that, from my research. I believe you attract what you haven't healed from. And oftentimes
Mm,
people, let's say if you walk out into the street and you get hit by a car and you break your leg. They scoop you up, they take you to the hospital, they call the orthopedic surgeon, they set your leg, put a cast on your leg, and throw you back out into the street. Now you're back out into the street again with a crutch,
mhm.
and you're still crossing the street and getting hit. You can't figure out, why do I keep getting hit? Because you haven't fully healed. And so when you think about
Mm,
the abuse that can occur, mental, physical, spiritual, and financial, if you haven't healed holistically from all of the injuries, then you're going to continue to make a wrong decision, because we always
right.
make the best decisions. But if we don't have the best knowledge, we can't make the best decision. And so you keep walking across the street because you haven't learned how to read the street signs. You haven't learned how to push the button. And then you're walking across
Right.
the street. Now you got a crutch on top of it, and you're going to get hit again even quicker, because now you're hopping across the street on this crutch. And so that's why, we continue sometimes to make the same choices over and over again, because we haven't fully healed, and we haven't allowed, and we're dragging all this baggage from one relationship to the next, one marriage to the next, one family to the
Right.
next, because we haven't healed and we keep making the same wrong choices again.
Absolutely. So you got the points of the red flags. what is the steps? What are a few points for the recovery?
Mhm. Well, this is what I was just talking about, the mental, physical, spiritual, and financial, and I would even add legal recovery. And so
Mm,
think about, all of the places you really need to, if you find your life being completely hit by a tornado of narcissistic destruction, let me tell you, they will destroy everything in your life, destroy your relationships with family, with friends, with coworkers, with neighbors. They will destroy you mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. And so guess what? You need to really sit down and make an assessment. Where does this touch my life? And you need to make sure you heal every part of that life. And so
mhm.
when I talk about those 8 steps to recovery, I'm talking about your mental and your physical, your spiritual and your financial and your legal recovery.
Okay.
It's not a normal breakup when you're dealing with a narcissist. It's like almost like having tentacles, and those tentacles have gone through your whole life. And now you can't, when you unravel, it just rips everything apart. We're
Hmm.
not talking about a normal person. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying that this is just men, because women do this too. But if
Right.
you're really dealing with someone who has narcissistic personality disorder, which is different from just bad behavior,
Right.
you're not dealing with a normal situation. And so you have to have all of these things to be repaired and recovered. And these 8 steps to recovery is what I'm talking about.
Okay. How would when you I want to ask two questions before I forget. So I have a friend who says that everybody has a little bit of narcissism in them. What does that mean to you? Do you feel that that is true? Do you feel like, because you said there's a low spectrum, we're a little bit selfish. We have to be selfish. It's almost like a self defense mechanism. We have to be selfish in certain areas. How do you relate that to being on the low end of the spectrum to the high end?
Okay. Well, that statement is not true. And I'm looking at it from this perspective of my research. It's just a very nice saying, not nice, but it's a very catchy saying that people say. Being selfish and looking out for yourself does not a narcissist make. Okay, that doesn't mean that you have any narcissistic tendencies. This is your basic survival skills, and everyone has the right to do that. Okay. But when you think about narcissistic personality disorder, only about 20% of the population can be diagnosed as having this disorder. The numbers are probably low because narcissists don't go to therapy. If they do go to therapy, they will try to groom the therapist, right? And so
Right.
really not any true numbers, but they say I mean, the researchers and the scientists and the psychiatrists, that about 20% of the population can be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. And so that statement is just kind of catchy, and it kind of throws a lot of people under the bus that don't belong there. You know,
Mm.
with my book, I said I want to make sure, I don't villainize men. Most men don't have this behavior that I'm talking about in my book.
Okay.
Okay. And I do warn women in my book, don't feel like because you have this situation that now all men are like this. Because you're going to need positive, strong men in your life and in the lives of your children to recover from this type of trauma. You're going to have a circle of men with you. And I'm not just saying that, I lived that. I lived
Right.
because while I was going through my legal battle, my personal battle, my financial and mental and spiritual, it's like you're fighting the devil. I had a troop of men that were with me. When I went into the court, there were men with me.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I want to honor those men with my book. And when you read my book, you'll see my book is dedicated to men. So people think, oh, wait a minute, this is a male bashing book. No, I give special acknowledgement to men and I name them.
Mm-hmm.
I would
Mm-hmm.
not survive what I was going through if not for the men that flanked around me, literally walking me into the courtroom.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. And so when people make those catchy phrases, well, everyone has a little bit of narcissism. Well, not really. People may exhibit some tendencies and traits, but it takes more than one or two of those red flags to say this person is a narcissist. The narcissist comes with intent. They start out
Mm-hmm.
with intent to destroy. They lay back, They groom, and after that grooming process, they start with uh, um, the spirit breaking. They start with degrading, diminishing behavior, belittling behavior, and then it
Yeah.
goes on to that abandonment and abuse, and then they disappear. And one of the psychiatrists said, if you are not clear if your spouse is a narcissist, the abandonment is going to be the key. They will abandon mentally, physically,
Mhm.
spiritually, financially. They will rip the rug out from under you because you mean nothing.
Mhm.
You broke up and you didn't see things right and you had a big fight. It doesn't mean this person is a narcissist, right? You want to know about the exit. How did this person leave the relationship?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those gems. If you guys have any questions, again, for Kaleema, feel free to type in your questions. We'll get them answered. The other question that I wanted to ask is when someone is in this type of situation, you hear a lot of people say, well, why didn't she just leave? Why did they just didn't go? I wouldn't put up with that. You have a lot of, can I say, ignorant responses,
Mhm.
that say, well, she's just crazy. I wouldn't put up with that, or this, and that. How do you tell that woman that is watching, the woman that is watching today, how do
Mhm.
you tell them, what would you say to them on how to get out of this situation?
Well, the first, excuse me, the first thing I would say to a person that says, why didn't she just leave, is the statistics show that the most dangerous time in a relationship is when the woman is leaving. Most women are killed when they're leaving a relationship. And also, statistics show that most women are killed by their significant other, a husband or a boyfriend, where most men are killed by strangers.
Mm.
Okay. And so that would be the first thing I would say. The second
Hmm.
thing I would say is you don't know. Sometimes women don't leave because of financial distress, emotional distress. She's been threatened, if you leave, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill your children. I'm going to do all sorts of things people threaten to do. So it may be fear and lack of
Right.
support. Because when you're thinking about in this particular situation, if you're dealing with a narcissist, all of your surroundings have been compromised. So who are you
Hmm.
going to now? Because let me
Right.
tell you, even in my case studies, oftentimes the women's family members, excuse me,
Hmm.
the family members have been so compromised that they really didn't have a chance to unpack what's happening because the person's always good to them, you know, being
Right.
available, being helpful, buying cars, buying trips, taking them on vacations, and now the family is confused.
Hmm.
This person abused you after we left the party, right? What do you
Right.
mean that this you never showed us this? You never had any black eyes or bloody nose or busted lips. But the psychological abuse doesn't show up that way,
Right.
right? And so there's so many just a host of reasons why women um, may choose to stay, and we just really have to be open to, especially if you're a family, excuse me, a family member or a friend, you have to be open to being the first responder. Because
Okay.
when the first responder shows up on the scene, when the ambulance shows up on the scene, when the fire truck and the police show up on the scene, they don't immediately ask, they shouldn't, those questions. Why are you here? Why are you laying in the middle of the street with a broken leg? They scoop you up, they do triage, they stop the bleed, mental, physical, spiritual, financial bleed. They stop the bleed,
Hmm.
then they address the why. And so that's what we should be doing, not saying, well, why didn't she leave? Now, in some cases, I would say, even for my own case, we never had an argument the whole marriage. I had no reason to think that this was going to happen. But in hindsight, there were flags. This conversation about me turning down this job, a little jab. But when a person gives you a little jab and you think, oh, it must be a mistake because we never argued, and you go on living the life, right?
Right.
Something out of the ordinary that this person is doing. Then most narcissists have hidden addictions: drugs, alcohol, sex, pornography. These are their
Mm.
choices, right? So you
Yeah.
may notice something is a little off kilter, or they make a statement that doesn't make sense, and then everything goes back to normal. And so you just go back to your life. So
Right.
oftentimes the person hasn't left because they haven't had a reason to leave, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just a host of things. But first and foremost, if you are a friend or a family member of a person who is in a situation, be like a first responder, conduct triage, that emergency care, stop the bleed, remove them to safety, and then try to unpack the why. Because you may not have time to do that if that person is in a dangerous situation, to question all of these things. Meanwhile, someone's life may be in the balance.
You bring that up. It's very difficult, even if I'm looking at it from the friend perspective, from the friend's perspective, because like you're saying, nothing is really for the woman or the man. There's nothing really giving that you're being abused. There's nothing really giving that this is happening unless, like you say, you may overhear it at a party, or you and your friend, you hear it, or she may mention it, but there's nothing really giving you the clue to actually do it.
Mhm.
How does one get the courage, and where do they go? How does one get the courage to leave, and where do they go to get help from? Because a lot of things, I know a lot of people say, you need to go to counseling. And I think I had this conversation on Facebook today or yesterday. People were saying, one of the ladies, she said, well, we need to be able to listen and be here for people. And one thing that I do know is that people don't really come out and talk their business. They're not
Mhm.
coming out speaking and saying, oh, this is what happened, or this is, they're not really doing that. So where do these people go? Because there's a lot of things that are happening, but where are they supposed to go? Especially if they don't have the means for counseling or the means for the money or for therapy or what have you.
Mhm. Right. And they need to just really, if it's a situation where they're aware, it's not sprung on them, right? Like the situation I described in my case, and there's some ongoing abuse and they're aware of what's happening, then they really need to find just that one safe person. And oftentimes it's going to have to be someone outside of your circle if this person has manipulated your entire circle, right? And so these places, when you think about going to, your primary care doctor, okay, let's say you don't have a primary care. If you have children, the pediatrician, these people are safe spaces and you can report, that you need help and get resources. Even here, I don't know if everyone here, in Virginia Beach, when you go by the fire department, it says safe house on the fire department. So these may be cases where you're experiencing some extreme physical abuse, or even not extreme, just any physical abuse. You really need to be able to connect with one person to say, I need help. And it's hard to say, I need help,
Right.
especially if you're a helper and a doer, and, or you just kind of embarrassed, and they will make sure that you feel ashamed. That's their goal. They're going to put
Right.
you in a situation where you feel ashamed so you can't report the abuse. Not only are you not going to report your abuse, when they leave, right? Or lock you out or whatever may happen, they're
Right.
going to go on to the next person and do the same thing. And that person won't know that the abuse is coming because they may
Mhm.
feel a sense of shame. And that's the other thing you have to make sure to remember, that it has nothing to do with you. Their behavior has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with the broken person that is them. And so you can't have this shame. And so in my case, it was just really shocking to everyone that I come before the religious community and file a public complaint. Now I'm filing a complaint in court, but now I'm dealing in a different court. Because when you shed light on something, you realize it's not the monster that you think it is, right?
Right.
And so once you do that, now you are going to take your power back.
Right. Right. Kim says, thanking God that I woke up and smelled the coffee.
Mhm.
Thanking God. Yes. So yeah, you mentioned about, and we're wrapping up. We got about 5 more minutes. You mentioned about the court and the community, and how you went about that, because it's not only did you have to get the divorce from your husband, but you also had to go through court for the community as a woman, as your Muslim rights, right? Is that correct?
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I did impress upon my attorney that, she was doing a great job protecting my rights as a citizen of the state. I said, but I'm also a citizen of the Muslim community, and I have a whole other set of rights that supersede this, that extend beyond this. And I need all of those to be addressed. She did, let me know, as she should, that, this is not a Muslim court, we can't do that. But then I said, but she said the judge won't rule on that. And I said, well, that's
Right.
okay. I just need the judge to hear it. I need it to come into the courtroom. You can't tell me that I have the right to practice my religion, but now I have to leave my religion, which was the basis for me making these decisions. I have to leave it on the courtroom steps. Like, how can that be?
Mm-hmm.
Judge doesn't have to rule on it, but I need her to hear it.
Right.
Because judges have the ability, once they're operating inside of this framework, they can color inside the lines however they want, and they can make decisions based on all of the information presented.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So that's what I want other people to know, even in a state where they say, oh, it's 50-50. No, it's not. It's 50-50 if you don't contest.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you
Mm-hmm.
have your religious beliefs heard in court. Well, yeah, you can. They may not rule on it, but you don't know how the judge is going to rule. Because if
Right.
they go within the lines and give you what you want, and you present the case, they can do it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, as we're coming to a close, thank you so much for dropping the nugget. Hidden in Plain Sight is the title of your book, and you can find this book where? Where can we get the book?
Okay, it's available online at Barnes and Noble, Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, and Kindle. And look for
Awesome.
the man with the flowers, because someone just showed me how now Amazon takes books that's called Hidden in Plain Sight and put them all with my book on Amazon. And they do it to other books too. And so it's to confuse people. So you click on something thinking you're buying something that you're not buying. But
Oh, yeah.
Barnes and Noble
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
do it. Amazon is doing it with AI. It's an AI feature in Amazon. And so
Wow.
on Good Morning America, they were complaining about how Amazon is tricking people into buying books that they didn't intend to buy. But anyway, it's at
Right.
Barnes
Right.
and Noble, Amazon, Google Play, iTunes, and Kindle. And I'll drop the links in the comment after the show.
Awesome. Awesome. Does anyone have any questions? Have you gotten anything out of it? Did you learn something tonight? Let us know in the comments. If you have any other questions, let us know your thoughts and what you thought about the podcast. We're absolutely gracious that she came on um, to tell us the story. About her book and everything. And I just want to state, just for the audience, that sometimes when we're interviewing people, they're still going through therapy, they're still going through counseling. So that is one of the reasons why we didn't really go into the testimony of her situation and what happened. But I just want to make sure that we know that this book is available. It has the 9 red flags and how many recovery steps?
8.
8.
8 steps to
And
recovery.
8 recovery steps. So definitely get out, purchase her book, and let us know what you think. Do you have anything, parting words or anything that you want to say, Kaleema?
I just want to say that, as I mentioned before, if you know someone that's in a situation and they seem like things are not quite all right, even if you don't see any physical abuse, really ask them if they're okay and listen, and really try to be the first responder, not interrogating them about the whys, but get them to a safe space. Even if you can't do it physically, at least get them to a safe space emotionally where they can speak with you and talk with you and provide that level of support, because we just never know when people are really on their last straw and they're reaching
Right.
out, and you don't want to blow that off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, we thank you for signing on the podcast with Beyond the Glitter with Diamond J, where we are actually going beyond the glitter. So we actually go in and talk about situations that normally a lot of people don't talk about. We go below the surface and try to be educated and try to understand a lot of stuff that's what's going on in the world and how to adapt and how to move forward with our lives. So I once again thank you guys for joining. I appreciate you. Join us tomorrow as we are going to be completing the series, the love series. We're going to be completing this series tomorrow with Crystal Carmen, and she is going to be talking to us about how she survived human trafficking. So be sure to join us tomorrow, and that is going to be tomorrow, 7 p.m. at Central Time. All right, we're signing off, and thank you so much for joining. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for the invite.
You're welcome.